Welcome to another edition of the Sim Racing Garage. I'm Barry Rowland. In this episode, we'll be reviewing the very good-looking hydraulic handbrake from the guys at Sim Coaches, a full-size sim racing control that should give the user a deeper dive into the immersion waters when driving with it. We will be looking at both the pedal set integrated unit and the standalone USB unit. Time to put them through the SRG's review process and see how they do. So, let's get to it. So let's take a closer look at this Sim Coaches hydraulic handbrake. First off, it looks very good. Got some beautiful CNC machining done on it, all billet aluminum, and yeah, just right out of the box, this thing looks very, very impressive. Something that I think just about anyone would be happy to have on their cockpit. Now, this is a massive handle on here. Of course, this is one solid piece of billet aluminum. It's 21 millimeters thick, so it's got a good thickness to it when you grab it, and it's not too much. I thought it might be a little too wide, but I got small hands. But yeah, no problem. It feels really good. And of course, you can see we have these nice accents cut out of the middle. A lot of chamfering and angles on all this stuff. Again, a lot of attention to detail that they did on this for the CNC machining. For the height on this, if you're thinking about getting one of these, it's 14 1/8 or 360 millimeters tall. And with our hydraulic cylinder back there, it's about 11 inches long, or we'll call that 280 as far as millimeters. So yeah, the detail, I'm trying to show you guys some of this stuff. You can see we've got chamfering around the holes here. We've got everything smoothly done here as far as the chamfering on the side, so there's no sharp edges. And of course, that runs the length of this handle assembly all the way down. Just well done everywhere you look. I really like this. Of course, I'm always a sucker for good CNC machined aluminum, or steel for that matter. We also continue on down here on the bottom part of the lever. See how they've milled this out? That's just pretty stuff right there. And we've got chamfering all in here where they did the milling. Like I said, just a lot of attention to detail where they did this work. And of course, down the side plates themselves, you can see where they've machined these pieces out. And I really like the tooling marks they leave in this. It's just one of those things that I like. Some people don't like it, but yeah, it just gives it that industrial, yet at the same time, beautiful look. And this is one piece of solid billet aluminum, obviously, a block that's we're mounting our master cylinder to. It's got some screw holes in here. It's got some on the other side holding our bracket. We've got a 1/4 inch thick or 6 millimeter thick flange here with some slots in it. We have no less than 8, I'm going to try not to turn this too much, bolts on the bottom, and the bottom is just as pretty as the rest of it is. So definitely looks like it's a sturdy build. I'm going to continue around to the other side here. You can see the bracket that holds the slave cylinder is a stainless steel piece, and they've actually cut that out too. A little bit of artistic design. It mounts to the side of this big block that's holding the master cylinder, and you can see the bolt down here on the bottom, and you can see through the gap up here the other one. Feels very secure and solid in hand. The pivot point down here has some bushings in it. And I may take that out, I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see what once we get there. But you can see they've actually machined this out too. The bottom part. They didn't leave that flat in there, which they could have. They went ahead and beveled both of those out, or cut both of those out. And of course down in here it's very well done too. Just a gleaming piece of art here. Now, let's talk about the hydraulics. They're using a Wilwood, very common, well-known cylinder manufacturer here in the US of A. And this is a 0.62 piston, which is around 5/8, I think, if my math is right, about 5/8 piston size in here. And you can see they even put the thread size in here for this fitting that goes in here, using a proper banjo bolt assembly here for transferring the fluid from here into our stainless steel tube. You can see the copper crush washers in there, so that's not going to leak. The line itself is a solid piece. It feels like it, unless it's just, you know, twisted tightly because of the curve here, but it feels very, very stiff and solid. It's got steel braid, and even the steel braid has a pattern in it, which is kind of cool. Instead of just steel braid with nothing. Very neat. I like the way they did that. Like I said, they really went about this with attention to detail in mind. Of course, this will go down to our slave cylinder, which is holding the piston here that's going to be used for our tension, or how much pressure we've used. And these are steel washers. They're spring washers, and they're stacked against each other so that they can squeeze together. But we'll see that in the adjustments part of the video. And we even have this piece here, this big knob that's another piece of billet aluminum that's been machined. And even this, look at how they put chamfering or chamfering on the sides here and in the center. And that continues on to the back, but we'll see that once we take it apart and take a look at it. But yeah, very nicely done here. I don't think anybody could argue with that this is definitely a piece of good looking equipment to have on your rig if you can afford it. This is not cheap, as you might imagine, but it's not too expensive compared to some of the stuff I've seen. Now, what we'll do is, let's see, we get this with it. This is it's about 10-foot long cord that's going to attach to our pressure sensor. And of course, our pressure sensor is coming off the top of our slave. And then we have a bleeder valve up top so we can bleed air out of the system when we need to. We have this piece here that connects. It's a 3-pin. It has a nice seal around the bottom here. We have a nice flexible rubber seal to keep moisture and dust out. And on the other side, we have this aviation type of connector, 4 pins. A little steel collar that will screw onto the other side. We're going to be plugging this into the SimCoach's pedal set that I'm also doing a review on, because it has a third wire coming out for this, and you'll see that once we get there. But yeah, nicely done sheathing on here. Like I said, attention to detail, and at these kind of price points you would expect this. We have a spring that we can put on this for the handbrake if we don't like this washer spring setup, and it depends on you, really. Depends on the person using it. So again, that's pretty subjective. So what we'll do next is take a look at the adjustments available on this handbrake. Let's take a look at the adjustments that are available on this handbrake. The one you'll be using the most is going to be this spring stack down here. Give you a closer look at it down here. This is some metal washers. They're spring steel, and when you pull down on this, they actually compress. Let me show you guys that. See how that works? And we use this as a preload. So we'll just spin this knob if it's not enough. So I can spin this down a little bit, and it'll actually make it harder, to do it the next time. Now, where you're going to end up with this, of course, is totally subjective. But it is adjustable. As far as if it's too stiff, even with it all the way out, let's say you're saying, well, geez, man, I've got this all the way out, and it's still too stiff for me. Then we've got an option here, and that is this spring. So what we have to do is take these off, which gives me an opportunity to show you some other things too. So I'm going to go ahead and spin this off, and I'll show you a close-up of this. Again, you can see the chamfering on the knob here on the front, even in the front down there, but they even have it on the back of the knob. See around the back over here? And of course, around here too. So again, a lot of attention to detail on this stuff. So what we want to do is get these off. And I'll take a couple of these off so you can see what they look like. These are concave shaped washers. They're spring steel. And that's what they look like. And they go together, face each other. The concaves face each other, and it leaves a space in there. See a little gap. So now when it pulls together, they spring together, and that gives you that flexibility that you saw. Now I want to take these off and put my spring on, but I may want to put these back on. So I'm going to try to get them all off without just having a big pile in my hand so they can go back on nicely. So let's see if this works. I think I tried it on the brake or something, and half of them got on and the rest came off when I was doing the pedal review segment. So let's go ahead and get them all going. I'm just going to butt my wrench up here and just try not to move anything as I slide them on there. Hey, it worked. There we go. How neat is that, huh? So now I can have them easy to go back on instead of trying to do it each individual one and turning them back and forth so the concaves are facing the right way. Anyway, we'll go ahead and get our spring out. And that's what this looks like. The diameter is perfect for this shaft here. Fit right over it. No problems. And then we'll come back in with our tensioning knob. Now, This is spring, so I don't think, yeah, see, I can't catch the threads here unless I push down and do it at the same time. So I'm going to try to do that. I'm right-handed, but let's see if I can do that with my left hand. Here we go. So it started now. So now we can use this obviously to adjust how much we want in the tension. And now it's going to be easier for me to pull this. Yeah, much easier. Which might be what you want. Of course, this couldn't be more subjective, I think. So there, yeah, pretty nice. Kind of feels good. But then you won't know until you have it solidly mounted to something, right? Now, the other adjustment we have is for our beautiful handle up here. And we have a bolt down here that is the pivot point for it. And it has an index system in it. I'm going to go ahead and pull that off. Now, remember, this is made in America, so this is a 3/16 hex wrench size. There's no metric here because we're still backwards about that kind of stuff, you know. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen this up and take the knob off. We'll take a look at it. All right. Let's take a look at the bolt. Oh, nice bolt. This has got a nice shiny shank part on it that helps this lever rotate. Get a focus there. There we go. And we have some knurling on the sides there for maneuvering it with our fingers. We have an index system here. You can see the pieces that have been milled out. And there is a pin over here that fits that index. And of course, we just had it straight up and down, so it was in the center hole there, right underneath the center of the lever. Now, if I wanted to do something like a normal handbrake or traditional handbrake like in a real car, I could turn this all the way this way if I wanted to. Let's do that and see what happens. Go ahead and put our bolt back in. Of course, this is going to make it much longer on your cockpit if you do it this way. So it's no big deal if you got the room and you want, that's how you want it. So, like you're reaching down on the floorboard and pulling on it. Let's turn this around. So now, yeah, you'd be pulling it up just like this. If I can do this without messing anything up. And it would be more next to your body like this. Like your body sideways. You'd be reaching down like this to grab it, I'm sure. Just like in most cars with like manual transmissions in them. Or we can do anything else that we want to do with this as far as where we're going to end up with it as far as an angle. I'm going to leave it in the upright position because I think that's where I'm going to be using it. Now, I might actually come back with it maybe a notch. But again, this is the type of thing that we really don't know until we have this thing attached properly. I'm going to go ahead and put this back where it is. Now, there is a way to fine-tune that angle if you want. And that's the last, I believe that's the last adjustment that we could possibly do on this thing. I can get this to go back in. There we go. And that is the piece down here, the rod end. It's got a nice precision rod end in here. And I'm going to go ahead and pull it off and show you what I'm talking about. Let's say I put this handle in a position back a little bit, but I still just, the reach that I have, I just still want to see if I can just tune it a little bit. Well, we can do that by pulling this bolt out of our rod end. There we go. So I'll pull that out. And I'll be careful here because the handle's probably going to want to fall forward. There we go. Put that down. Like so. And it does. And we have a nice stainless steel M8 bolt here. Little button head unit. So now this, we can spin this in and out on this rod. Now it's a 7/16 and a ½ inch. And I believe I still have those wrenches out here. Yes, I do. And we need the 7/16 for the rod end itself. That'll keep it from twisting on us. And then I'll use the ½ inch for the nut back here. So that nut actually locks it in place. I'm going to put this so I can do my little squeeze deal to keep things from flying around. And hopefully this works without too much effort. There you go. I didn't think it would be. So now we have this loose. I can spin it back up. Now, of course, there's only going to be so much I can fine tune this. If this was sitting in here, there's only so far I can make it go in or out because there's a limited amount of threads in here. In fact, what I'm going to do is, before I get too crazy here, I'm going to go ahead and take it off and use my nut as a reference from where it was. See, little things like that help you get back exactly where you were starting before. I'll just show you guys this rod end. Very nice rod end here. Everything just moving very, very smoothly, precisely, good precision unit. Again, high-end stuff, and you wouldn't expect anything less for something around this price point. And you can see there's the threads. And they go pretty deep. So if I was here, and that's going to keep me straight up anyway, so that's going to help me when I come back to. I'm going to go ahead and take the nut, spin it down. So let's say it was up like this, and I say, well, I just want just a few more degrees, and it would be perfect for my reach. It would make my life a lot simpler when I'm actually driving and using my handbrake. So obviously we can just take this and spin it in until I think I'm where I need to be. Then I'll take my nut, put it back on, bring this back up, and that would have changed my angle a little bit. And I could still change it. Again, there's going to be a limited amount of what I can do back and forth here, because you don't want to take it all the way out to the very edge either, because you want some decent threads in here to support what you're doing, right? You don't want to take it out too far. And that would be more of a fine-tuning adjustment. That's the way I would look at it anyway. So that would be the last thing that you could do for an adjustment on this. And I'm just going to leave it there. Get this back in, and we'll tighten it back up. You want to make sure you get everything tightened up properly again before you use it. And I'm going to go ahead and use my 7/16 to hold the rod in once more. We'll take our 1/2 inch, and there we go. Just kind of tighten that together, and there we go. It won't move. There it is. And that's about it as far as adjustability. So not a lot to look at here as far as that goes, but yeah, really the important thing is how does it perform, right? And can it adjust to a point that's going to make it feel good to me when I'm using it? And I think it'll be able to do that. I'm not sure about the spring though. I might have to go back to the metal washer things, but we'll see that once we get it mounted. And that's what we're going to do next. Take it over to the rig, get it mounted, and see how that goes. Now we'll look at the standalone handbrake option from Sim Coaches. This is the USB handbrake. And yeah, I really like it. It's identical to what we see over here. This is the handbrake that you saw already in the previous segment that actually attaches to the throttle pedal and has its own very long cable to allow it to do that. But this is the USB edition. And there's a couple of things different on here. And I'm going to show you the first obvious thing that we see here is there's a big hole in the housing here. And I believe this is the same housing they use on the throttle pedal, this part of it. Because it also has, if you saw the pedal set review I did for the Sim Coaches pedals, it has the same kind of deal where it has the hole in here, and the electronics board is mounted inside of this aluminum metal housing, which is super for EMI mitigation. And again, hats off to Sim Coaches as a company for seeing that as an issue and addressing it, like so many other builders of electronics for sim racing gear do not, and still leave their electronics hanging out in the air. All right, so we have the hole in there, and this is, when you fire this up and you connect the USB cable to it, it shows up as an Arduino board. So they're not using a Bodner board in here. And yeah, this is the dongle that's hanging out, or the connection hanging out, that needs to be connected to the pressure sensor up here. This is our, obviously, USB cable, a nice long one. It has the cloth sheath on it. It's got that little pattern on it there. Plenty long to reach where I needed it to, and I'm on probably one of the longer reaches out there because of the rig that I'm running. And it was able to get to my USB hub with no issues, which is very good. So what we do here on this pressure sensor to get this connected, they give you another cable here. And it's a little short one like this. And of course, all we're going to do is connect this end that has the rubber seal on it, just like the rest of their pedals has. Very nice pliable rubber seal on here. And it's a 3-pin connector. And we have a 4-pin connector over here. Again, that aviation style screw-on deal. So what you simply come in, and you can see the tab here on this top of this plug, and there is a little piece here that's going to catch that tab. See it hanging right there. And it's really easy, obviously. We just plug it in. And there we go. I like that it has the seal in there, keeping dust and everything out. And then we'll take this part. I'm going to have to set this down to do this, and connect it to the cable that's going to our electronics board inside of the housing. And it's easy enough to line these up too. This is actually keyed. There is a slot in this side of the plug. You can see a little slot there on top. And then obviously there's a corresponding tab, or key if you will, on the other one. Again, very easy to do. Just hook it up. I'm a little surprised they don't hook this up at the factory, but you know, I guess it could catch on something during shipping, so yeah, probably safer not to. But easy enough to do, again. So now we have our pressure sensor connected to the board inside, so we can read what the position is based on the pressure we're getting on the pressure sensor. So yeah, everything's good here. It's again identical to what we have over here. There is a couple of things you might notice different, and that is this piece here. I'm going to turn it this way. They've added a little notch here to this piece of the billet aluminum in the machining process. You see the bottom there. It's just a hole that they've got a little support out there, left some metal obviously, then drilled a hole, tapped it with threads, and ran this threaded bar in it. And it has a little stop piece here. What this does is an adjustable stop. At least it's pretty much adjusts as far as I would want to go out right now, so that there is a stop on it. Maybe I could go out another 1/4 inch, maybe, you know, 7 millimeters, 8 millimeters before I just would not be comfortable with how much thread's left in here. But this is a stop to keep from over traveling our master cylinder back here. And I think they had an issue where somebody did that on either a clutch or a brake or what have you. So now they're manufacturing this little piece in here to keep that from happening. Now in actual use, and you'll see that in the driving segment of the video, I never got that close. And if I sit here on the bench, because when I'm pulling on the handbrake, I'm not pulling it that far. Let me catch up in the back here. I'm probably doing it something along that line based on how much preload I have on the spring here. But to pull it all the way back, I really have to get in here and get my bicep involved. And I still don't quite get there because the spring here bottoms out before that happens. So just something new they put in there. If I was going to run this all the time, I'd probably just take this off because I have no concern of over traveling the master cylinder. But yeah, they're going to put this on all the new brake pedals that they're manufacturing and the clutch pedals because they have master cylinders on them too, just to prevent somebody from hurting something. Now there's also a different spring that they sent me with this one, and it's a heavy duty spring. It's a stiffer spring. If you saw the Simcoach's pedal review, I think I mentioned that one of the springs in here felt pretty weak for the handbrake, like it was barely there. So yeah, they listened. Now we have a nice stiff spring, which feels very good. I really like the way this spring feels. You know, I'm not sure if it's going to keep me from using the spring washers over here, but it does feel good. And of course, preload is subjective. And of course, the feel of this thing is subjective, but it has a nice feel to it. It has a nice hydraulic feel to it, if you will. Even though we're not moving much hydraulic fluid here, because of the rate on the spring that they've chosen, it just feels natural, analogish, if you will. Now, over here, we have the springs, and I've switched the springs out between them. And I put these over there on that one. And to be honest, I couldn't tell a whole lot of difference. This one is a little bit stiffer, I think. And if I take some preload off of it, it's getting close to this. There's a little different feel to them. But again, nothing could probably be more subjective than how you like your handbrake to feel when you're pulling on it. So yeah, I think I could go either way, to be honest. They both feel very good and very analogish, as I like to say. Again, we're not moving a lot of hydraulic fluid here doing this, but the spring rates on this and this just give it that feel like you might expect a hydraulic system to feel if you had it in your handbrake in your car. When I was actually using this handbrake, it felt very good. Other than that, everything is exactly the same as this one, which is good because I really like the design on this one also. Again, it depends on how you want to adjust your handle here. This one, I have it a little bit further back. I think the angle, if you guys can tell that in the video, this one's a little bit leaned back, but I could always loosen this up and match it up by turning it because of the notch system inside of there that we saw before for adjustments. But yeah, other than that, everything is exactly the same. And yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with this handbrake, and you'll see that in the driving segment. I really like the way this handbrake is set up and the way it feels. Full-size control. I mean, you can't ever go wrong with that if you're looking to simulate what you're doing in a real car. These actually do really well. This is my final mounting configuration for the handbrake. And I have some 40 series profiles here, and I use these same profiles for mounting my ProSim H pattern shifter. And I mount it on, of course, the main piece here for mounting that we get with this GT Omega Prime cockpit. So there's a corner bracket on either side of the profile here, and only one on this side. Now, typically I'll have another one on this side, but because of the width limit that I have on the flange, the mounting flange, you can see it there where I had the bolts in, I couldn't get, obviously, another corner bracket in there. So I moved it over. Let's get a look at it down here. And you can see that I have it mounted over here on the main mount for the GT Omega cockpit, and I also have it attached to the bottom of that 40 series profile. This also helps with the twisting motion. As I pull on the shifter, it's going to get twisted a little bit towards me, because when I'm sitting in the seat over here, obviously I'm reaching out at an angle to grab this handle, and that's kind of putting an angle on it like that. So it's a good place to put the extra bracket. It certainly doesn't hurt having it there. And if you look, I have it angled a little bit. If you can see the straight piece here of the profile, that's straight, but you can see this is off angle a little bit. And that's just a comfortable way for me to sit there. And I'll show you that in a minute when I'm getting in there. Now, I went with the steel washer springs, the spring steel washers. And the reason is, this was just a little bit too light feeling to me, the spring that came on it. No big deal. It feels pretty good. It's easy to adjust this too. When you're in it and using it, I really like this big CNC knob here they have for adjusting the preload on this. Very easy to use and just, yeah, just works. Now I'm using the connection here. You can see I've got my cable on the pressure sensor, and I'm connecting it to the pedals over here. The last piece that was hanging off that wasn't connected now is connected, because that's the handbrake. So now I have all three on these pedals. And of course, I'm not using the USB piece because I'm rather just go right into the pedals instead of using the extra box. But again, it's nice having that USB box so that we can just run the handbrake without the pedals. I'm going to go ahead and walk around here, get in. Yeah, okay. Yeah, right away, there's a different feel to this, not only because it's a full-size control. You haven't lived until you have a full-size control in your cockpit. It's just like, again, the immersion gets deeper because I'm not pulling on this little handbrake piece. But yeah, this is definitely different. The main one I've been using has been the Heusinkveld, and that one has a totally different feel than this does because it has a load cell instead of the pressure sensor running on a hydraulic system. They're still both pressure-based, but just a different feel, as you might imagine. And of course, having the steel spring units in here instead of a rubber bumper of certain diameters that you can change, this feels definitely different. It feels a little bit more analogish, I guess is what I want to say. Heusinkveld does a good job, and I like that one, but this, yeah, this is just a different deal when you're pulling on it. And again, that's subjective. Some people might not agree with that. I have it in the straight up position because that's normally how I want to grab my handbrake when I'm driving. Just reach down over here off the wheel, and there it is. So yeah, I think it's right where it needs to be. I have clearance on my arm here over the top cap of the hydraulic reservoir, so I'm never going to hit that. I mean, I could actually just rest my arm on it if I wanted to, but yeah, when I'm using it, yeah, that's never going to be an issue because I typically kind of grab towards the top anyway when I'm coming off the wheel to use the handbrake and then go back to the wheel. So yeah, this is really, I think, going to work very well, as you might imagine. This is a good feeling handbrake. So what we'll do next is, yeah, we'll just go ahead and get in and do some driving. I think we're going to do the rally car and iRacing in the Rallycross series. Yeah, and see how that works out for us. So before we get to the actual driving segment, I want to show you guys my final solution here. I like the SimCoach's handbrake, the feel of it better than the previous solution I was running with this sequential shifter, which was the Heusinkveld. Of course, it's all subjective, but I really like, personally, this setup better than I did with the Heusinkveld. Anyway, so the SimWorks sequential shifter is my go-to sequential shifter for everything. It's just an awesome shifter. It has a great feel to it. It's a full-size control, obviously, just like this handbrake is. And yeah, had to get it mounted on, and this is what we came up with. I just used some scrap 6061 aluminum. What is it, 6 mil thick or 1/4 inch thick. Drill some holes so we can get the bolts attached to the top of the shifter itself. Had to cut a rectangular piece out on the back to accommodate the rear shifting lever part of this SimWorks shifter. And yeah, then go ahead and cut off the corners, get some radius on it, hit the belt sander outside where you don't have to worry about all the dust aluminum dust that comes off. And yeah, this is the final thing. Once we drilled and tapped some holes into the plate to accommodate the handbrake itself, yeah, we were good to go. And this is the result, and it works really well. Yeah, I think it turned out pretty good. And this is going to be my new go-to setup for all the dirt stuff where it requires a handbrake. So yeah, the Husingveld is off to the side on the shelf now unless I need it for something else. But yeah, this is what I'm going with, and I just want to show you guys how I did this. And anybody can do this, I think. I used a cheap benchtop drill press, again, another cheap Grizzly benchtop bandsaw, and of course you saw the $30 Harbor Freight belt sander I was using. So again, just about anybody can do this. So yeah, I think it turned out really good, and we'll see how it drives once we're in the driving segment. We're at iRacing, and we are at Sonoma's Rallycross track. Of course, the dirt stuff is what we want to be with this handbrake. We are in the Ford Fiesta. And yeah, right off the bat, I really like this handbrake. It just comes to its own. It's a full-size control like I discussed before if you watch the segment. And yeah, it's just a great one to use. It has a definitely different feel than the Husingveld that I've been using in the past. Even though the Husingveld is a good one in its own right, this one just felt more analogish, if you will, to me when I was pulling on it. And yeah, I really liked the way this felt. And in fact, I liked it so much that I decided it was going to be, I'm going to start using this SimCoach's handbrake as my main handbrake, which required me to go fabricate a plate that you've already seen in this video. If you watched that segment where I did the mounting segment, I fabricated a 6061 aluminum plate to allow me to mount this handbrake on top of the SimWorks shifter. And the SimWorks sequential shifter is my favorite sequential shifter for this kind of stuff, just hands down. It's a full-size control. It goes really well with this SimCoach's handbrake and the way I set it up. As you can see in tandem here, yeah, who would not like this? So they come together quite well. I was able to get it mounted up to where it's stiff and it feels like I think it should feel. And yeah, it's just the immersion gets just even deeper here in the rally type of driving that anyone would be doing. And yeah, just having a blast here using this. The spring you see here is a updated spring. It's a heavy one that SimCoach has sent me to test, and I was using the spring washers, which I still may go back to. I kind of like the feel of those too. I still haven't made my mind up, and of course that's so subjective. Yeah, it really doesn't matter at that point. The hydraulic system is doing a good job here. The pressure sensor catches just like it should, very linear, and yeah, I really don't have any problem with this. And by the way, the one you're looking at now is the USB standalone USB handbrake that I'm using right here. And when you saw the previous video, it was the handbrake that you run with the pedals, the SimCoach's pedals. If you buy that set, they can just plug right into the Bodner board that's on those pedals. So yeah, everything is going well here. I really like this handbrake, and it's coming together really good with the shifter. So as you guys might imagine, having it on the 60OF PT actuator rig here with the sway and the traction loss and of course the jumps, yeah, it's brilliant. It comes together to really get you feeling like you're on the dirt. Yeah. So anyway, we'll go ahead and get to the final thoughts. Final thoughts on the SimCoach's hydraulic handbrake. This handbrake is made in the same way that their pedal set is, all CNC'd from billet aluminum. The handbrake certainly looks good. It uses Wilwood parts in both the master cylinder and the slave cylinder, just like their pedal sets. It also uses a pressure sensor to relay lever position. This is a full-sized handbrake. As with any full-size simulator control, its size does add to the immersion factor when using it. SimCoach's has two versions of the handbrake, one that integrates with their pedal set and a standalone USB plug-and-play version. I used both in their respective configurations and could not tell the difference between them. There is a difference in the feel of the resistance media used. You can use the new stiffer spring that now ships with each handbrake, or the spring washer stack. I like the feel of both options, and at the time of this video publication, I'm still trying to decide which one I'll be using. I have the older version of this handbrake and the newer version in the USB unit. There are some differences between the two. The USB version has the electronics board embedded in an aluminum housing, just like on the throttle pedal assembly. This should help mitigate EMI interference issues. You will also notice that the master cylinder now has an extra area machined into the body's large mounting flange. Here they drilled and tapped a hole that receives a threaded rod. The rod acts as an over-travel stop. All their new currently shipping pedal sets will have this on the clutch and the brake pedals as well. There has been an instance where the master cylinder piston rod was pressed so far in that it bottomed out in the master cylinder and bent. This was a great time to test SimCoach's customer service commitment. They have a lifetime warranty on their products, so if you have this issue, they will replace the damaged pedal with a new one that has the integrated stop assembly. I like this handbrake so much, I've integrated it with my SimWorks sequential shifter, where before I was using the very good Husingveld unit. When using the handbrake in my rally configuration, I felt like it was a natural analog feeling pull. Of course, this adds to the immersion when driving on dirt. Pairing it with my full-size SimWorks sequential shifter was a very natural feeling experience. I think most will agree this is a great handbrake in both its looks and performance. Thanks again for watching the Sim Racing Garage channel. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you would like to help support what I do here at the SRG, visit my website at simracinggarage.com.